What's up everybody, how's it going? I'm Brad Dollar, producer, engineer, and coach. Thanks so much for joining me. Today, I thought we would tackle one of the bigger existential problems of making music, and that is, when am I done? Especially when it comes to mixing, it's hard to know exactly when you're finished. It's hard to know exactly how far to go, and if you haven't gone far enough. Plus, with the ability to endlessly recall and keep tweaking and keep working on mixes pretty much indefinitely, the process can drag on forever. And that doesn't help you connect with more people and get your art out into the world. So I put together some tips for you that will act as indicators to know when you're finished, when you can move on from mixing, and when you can get on to the next piece of music that you want to work on. But before we get started, if you can do me a huge favor and smash that like button and smash that subscribe button, that would let the almighty YouTube algorithm know that I'm here, that I exist, and that more people just like yourself can find this information and get help getting to the finish line of their music. All right, let's go. Your first indicator to know when you're done mixing is deadlines. Do you have to turn this thing in? Do you have a release date? Are there tangible dates in your calendar when you need to have something done by, something uploaded by, and something sent off by? Having a deadline, first and foremost, will really help you put a scope into any project you're working on. Even if you're like, this project's gonna take 5 years, or if it's just gonna take 5 hours, whatever it is, have a sense of how long that you want to spend on it. And that's not just so you can preserve your time and manage your time, and we could talk about that later on. But it's really to know, okay, when I get to this point, I need to call it quits. I need to get on beyond this, because we have to start with the fact that music is always in a place of growth. Music is always in this form of flux, and it's always being reinterpreted and transforming. So music really isn't finished. I think there's a quote that's used in other fields, and it's that something is never finished, it's just abandoned. And that's kind of true with the song, right? It gets to a certain point and it feels pretty much perfect, but if you kept listening and you left it up in your Pro Tools session for a long time, you'd find more stuff to work on. It's always like that. Whenever you let go of something, it always feels like there's still more stuff to do. So having a deadline can help you just come to terms with that and be like, well, that's when it was due. I had to turn it over. We had to release it. We had to put it out. We had to go on tour. We had to submit it to the vinyl manufacturers or the disc manufacturers, whatever the reason is. Like, having a deadline to know when you have to hand a piece of music over is really, really helpful. So if you have nothing else to indicate when you should move on from a mix, the deadline is a great place to begin. 2 notes about deadline. First, when we're thinking about a due date, it's really helpful to just reverse engineer back from that due date. By that I mean, if it's due on October 1st and you started on August 1st, well, you know you have that much time to work on that piece of music. You can actually start from the end, right? So final mastered track, then before that you have final mix, before that you have last mix tweaks, before that you have mid mix tweaks, before that you have mix start, before that you might have pre-production, so on and so forth. Having a sense of the actual timeline that the music is most likely going to travel on is really helpful. And this is what makes good labels and good teams so successful, is they have a calendar and they have a sense of when they want something done by, and they can actually build logistics and plans around completing it, versus how most of us make music, which is the idea comes in, we work on it, kind of just like every day is a new day with the schedule around making the song feel complete and finished. So having that sense of like, we need to get it done by here and by when, will really put some good pressure on you to help your song be its best. You know, pressure makes diamonds, and this is where it comes from. If music just grows too wild and too free, it can become something really special, but it can also consume so much of your time and energy that you're missing out in other places. And the second tip I have for deadlines before we move on is, don't set anything that's unrealistic. Deadlines should not mean that you're rushing to complete something. Deadlines should just mean that you have a sense of the time that you're going to spend on something and the schedule in which that time will be used. So when working off a deadline, especially one that you set yourself, be realistic and be compassionate to yourself and to your workflow. Give grace to yourself, because it might take some people a long time to get to the end of a song, or it might take some folks a long time to finish a chorus or a lyric. And if that's you, embrace that. Don't rush it. You'll get to the end, but have a sense of when you want the end to be, so you can work towards that and complete your ideas. Another way to know when you're done mixing is to ask yourself, did I accomplish my goals? Did I take this demo to a finished single? Did I make this song sound like the rest of the songs that it's going to go with? Did I include all the instrumentation that either I wanted to, or my team wanted me to, or the organization I'm pitching the song to wanted to have included? Did I make the song sound energetic like I wanted to? Did I make the song sound somber like I wanted to? Did I help the song itself meet the creative expression I had in my mind? Whatever that goal is, just like your deadline, have that figured out before you start, or at least at the beginning of when you start. This is one of the key indicators to know if you've gone far enough or if you've gone too far on your production and on your mixing. It's very easy to start working on a batch of songs, whether they're our own songs or maybe you're mixing an album for another artist. It's very easy to become myopic around each song and to think about each song individually and how to serve each song individually, and that's really, really great. I think that's wonderful. I think every song should stand on its own, absolutely. However, when they're going to be paired with a collection of music, when it's a whole album or a whole EP, or it's for a whole vibe or a whole aesthetic that's being deployed by an artist, one of the things you really have to know before you say I'm done mixing is, did you meet the goals that you wanted to achieve around the sonic character of the music? Because making music is so subjective, it's really easy just to, strum a guitar chord, sing a vocal hook, and be like, oh, I'm done, cool, let's move on. Throw some EQ on it, some reverb, we're done. Of course, it's easy to say you're done and just to cop out and be finished whenever you want to be. But when you have that goal in mind of like, okay, I really want this to sound like a PJ Harvey style indie folk track with a Death Cab for Cutie kind of reverb sound, a Michael Jackson funk guitar. If those are in your brain when you're going in, and then you get to the mix phase, ask yourself, are they here? Did I accomplish that goal that I wanted to accomplish inside of this? Also inside of your mix, did you accomplish the vision you had for it? Did you imagine that you wanted it to be, a shorter song or a longer song? Did you imagine it growing over time or being really heavy in the beginning and very soft for the rest of it? Whatever that goal may be, have a sense of what that is as you're starting, and then check your mix against that throughout the process. And that will be a really quick and easy indicator to know if you're done and if you can move on. Another way to know when you're done mixing, and we touched upon this just a moment ago, is does it sound like the reference? Does it sound like the references and the demos and the playlists that you've been going back and forth with trying to make this music sound like? Does it sound like that? Does it feel like that? It's okay if it doesn't, but knowing where it stands in relation to the references you started with is very important. Now, sometimes, and a lot of times when we're just writing, we pull our guitars off the wall, or we pull up a key line and we start doing something, we're not really set on, okay, let's make it sound like this. But we all know with creating anything, whether that's a song or a birdhouse, as soon as you get started, the vision for what it's supposed to be starts to materialize. And then you sort of have a reference for what I want it to be like. If it's a birdhouse, you're like, oh, I'm trying to make this little cute Victorian style gabled birdhouse. And then you can really make sure that the thing you're making looks like that reference you had. And in music, it's really, really helpful in terms of knowing when you're done with mixing to cross-reference against the reference, especially when it comes to things like low end and high end, vocal volumes, level of effects, all those kinds of very macro characteristics of a song that don't necessarily dictate the style or the individuality of the mix, but the bulk stuff, the stuff that people really focus on and helps us to feel like if a song sounds like our goal, for example. So having a really, really great reference is important, and asking yourself, does this mix sound like this reference? Does it sound better than the reference? Does it sound worse than the reference? But just having that reference, having that place to see where things are at will immediately tell you if you need to keep mixing, if you haven't gone far enough, if you went too far, if you're not even close, all those things. References can also be a really helpful tool for helping teams of people come together on a mix and make a cohesive decision. Typically when we're mixing, it's maybe 1, 2, sometimes 3 people work on a mix to bring it to completion, but usually it's just one person at the helm. However, there's always a lot of people involved. There's other bandmates, the artist collaborators, maybe there's a manager or a label or an A&R person. Sometimes there's a distributor involved if it's for a special release. There's all kinds of folks who want to weigh in and will weigh in and give you feedback on where things are at. And so having references that you all agree upon can help you all to speak the same language. Most people who are not producers and engineers and artists don't speak the same way. They may not describe low end the same way as you. They may not describe effects and things the same way as you. But if you all have a group of songs that you can point to and be like, oh, we want it to sound like this, or we want the drums to sound like this, or the vocal to sound like this, that can be a really, really helpful asset in coming to a cohesive decision around whether or not a mix is done. Now, that doesn't mean that you should wash out the individuality and the specialness and the uniqueness of your song trying to make it sound like all these other tracks, but because these other tracks have been produced and created, or at least they're out in the world and many eyes and ears have been on them before they came out, it gives you a sense of like, well, if they thought that low end is okay, and if it's at the top of the charts and people think low end sounds okay, and I kind of make my low end sound like that, at least I'm in the right ballpark, at least I'm in the right place of it sounding similar, and so I don't have to guess and wonder, did I hit the mark? So having a really good reference or a set of references can help you to know right away if you're done mixing or if you need to keep going. One more note for references. Outside of the particular project you may be working on, you should have a set of references that you can use anytime and place. No matter what the style of music is, no matter what you're working on in the mood, 3 or 4 songs that are in a playlist, and you can change them whenever you want. That when you play them, it helps you know what the speakers in the room sound like. It helps you to know and readjust your ears to bass if you've been working on a bunch of high-end stuff all day. It just helps put you in a very familiar place so you know exactly where you're at. So I recommend 3 or 4 songs making sure they have a dynamic range between them, a quiet one, a really loud one that's really bassy, and like one that's really like acoustic driven. That's kind of like my gamut that I usually have. So pick those songs out, play with them, listen to them, and know them intimately. Know all the parts of them so that when you hear them in different places, or when you hear a song you're working on next to it, you can point that stuff out to yourself. Like for example, I've always used Dream Brother by Jeff Buckley on his Grace record for a lot of stuff. I love the fidelity of it. It's very wide, it's very spacious, very dynamic. I've listened to it so many times that I know all the little intricacies that are in it. So when I'm mixing and I make something that sort of sounds like that, I want my mixes to have that kind of same intricacy and dynamic level. Now, not everything I mix sounds like that, right? Like if I mix a trap track, I'm not gonna reference Dream Brother by Jeff Buckley, but I will have in the back of my head to know, okay, that's what space and intimacy sounds like. If I want any of that in this trap song I'm mixing, I can borrow from that reference to embody that. So that's just one example, but having references for both the project you're working on and then also your overall process and workflow will really help you to know when you're done mixing and when you can move on. All right, well, I hope that was helpful. Mixing is seriously one of the toughest parts of making music, and it's the task that really ties everything together and makes things listenable for people. The best thing you can do for your mixing skills and your process and workflow is to be studying, watching videos, looking at people that you really respect and admire, and dissecting other mixes that you really love so that you can learn more about how to make your process more informed and so that you can do the best work that you possibly can. If you have any more questions, please drop them down below in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, please like it. And if you want to see more, definitely subscribe. There's more on the way. You can also follow me on social media at BradKDollar on TikTok and Instagram and all those good things. And let me know what you want to see. Love to answer your questions and help you get to the finish line faster than you imagine. All right, see you later.